What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you spending some more of your time here with me today. Now, if you've been interested in the Glock Gen 5 stuff, you need to stick around specifically for the Glock 45. Not the 45 caliber, the actual Glock Model 45. This has become my favorite gun on all of Glock's platform. Right away when I started using this gun, I instantaneously enjoyed what Glock had done to it, and I really liked how they had changed things around in the Gen 5s period, except for like the first version when they got that stupid half moon cut out in the grip. Topic for another day. But the 45, this thing is definitely my favorite gun on the Glock platform. And I think it's probably a lot of your favorite gun on the Glock platform. If you're 19 lovers, you just don't know it yet. So if you want to know what went into this gun and what changed in the Gen 5 specifically, and why I think that Glock 45 is the best Glock on the Glock platform, stick around for that whole video because we are going to get into this thing deep, take it apart, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what the Glock engineers did to make this feel better and to finally get rid of some of that nasty trigger feel. So I got this pretty much right when they were released. I got one of the first ones the gun store actually, in fact, I think it was the first one the gun store had actually got in. And I've been running this thing and running this thing. And the reason I've waited so long is because this gun was pretty much designed with a couple groups of people in mind, law enforcement and military. Now, as we all know, Glock just missed that military contract with the 19X. And a lot of people say, well, it's just a black 19X. Well, yes and no. There are some changes. They're minute between the 45 and the 19X, but they did bring a lot of that into the Model 45. And I think a ton of people out there have been waiting for something like this, like people who carry Glock 19s but are tired of buying mag extensions for $30, $40, $50 a piece. Now, Glock did take a lot of cues from the trigger system in the Model 43. Now, I have a video on that I went deep into how they changed the trigger on it. We're gonna do that here as well so you guys know what this Glock 45 is all about. They did make some changes to that trigger mechanism, which make a really big difference in just how it feels. Because we all know, Glock doesn't really have the best feeling trigger out there. You can get by with it, but it's not the best, which is why a ton of people use aftermarket triggers. The 19X, now it was a bit of a failure, but there's a huge fan base out there for it. They love carrying around that stick of peanut butter with them. Now, law enforcement and military are really the market that we're digging this gun and this style of gun because you get to break leather faster. You've got that shorter 19 length, which a lot of departments do issue and carry, but you've got the 17 size capacity. The 19X cured that, gave you the 19 slide, the 17 grip, but they changed the bottom of the grip around. You've got that stupid front ledge that keeps you from using all the different Glock mags. A lot of people are having that removed, but one of those things that it was like a military request doesn't necessarily fit, you know, all of civilian or law enforcement needs. It was a definite design the military wanted. And as we all know, when the federal government wants something, they usually get it. The other thing that I really enjoy about this is those front serrations. Now, if you've never attended any kind of training or anything where they've actually done like downed person drills, downed officer drills, or injured soldier drills, and you may have to begin treating somebody and then go and actively engage another person, if your hands are covered in any kind of substance or cream or blood or anything from doing treatment, you are going to have a tough time running that gun if you have malfunctions. Now, yeah, if you use your man hand, you can get through it, but it's gonna be slippery. So front serrations, the more grip you can get on this gun, the better off you're gonna be. And the other reason I really wanted to wait to do this, besides just getting a ton of rounds through it and using it kind of what it was meant to be used as on weapons belts and using manipulation drills, was because I managed to finagle myself into Glock Armor School. And not like some Glock Armor School that was put on by some like third-party agency, which I don't even think Glock certifies. This was an actual school taught specifically by Glock themselves, which was super awesome. So thank you for who sponsored me on that. I can't put that information out there publicly, but I really appreciate it. This gives me the opportunity to kind of get in the minds of what the design changes were, why they did it, and just get a deeper understanding of the gun so I can relay that information to you. And I gotta tell you, there was a couple of things I learned that were like myths that kind of have been spread around over the years, like you can't use the slide stop as a slide release. BS. And I knew that from general, but a lot of people still think that, Okay, if you think that, why does Glock themselves make an extended slide release or stop? Because it's both. So let's get into this thing, let's check it out, and you guys can make an informed decision on it. This is something that may suit your needs, or maybe something that you want to maybe get rid of one of those older Glocks, or just stop carrying it and put it in the safe like I do, and get yourself something like this, because like I said, definitely my favorite gun on the Glock platform right now. All right guys, we are gonna get into this Glock 45 like it is prom night. So I wanna start on the outside, work over some of the things that they changed for the Gen 5 and the 45 specifically, and then we'll get really deep into this and talk about some of the differences that Glock did on the inside to make that trigger feel better. So aesthetically, on the Glock 45, we can tell we have the front serrations. Now, a lot of people get slide work to get that done. I enjoy it. It really does give you an area to do press checks or to manipulate that slide from the front should you have an issue where you can't grab it from the rear. So the finger groove removal was huge. A lot of people had been asking for that, myself included, because I just hate the finger grooves on the Gen 3 and the Gen 4. I had them removed on multiple guns. It just didn't fit my hand. So obviously the Glock 45, the Model 45, we get the 17 length grip. This helps us because we no longer have to go out and buy magazine extensions to get that capacity of the Glock 17. They've also done a very nice job flaring that mag well out. It does help quite a bit. A lot of people get aftermarket mag wells, but that really does help me index. You can see the size of my hands, even on this frame, is still just pretty much eating it all the way up. So that is definitely great. Obviously, we retain the ability to change those back straps as we did in the Gen 4. We retain the reversible magazine release there, but they gave us the addition of the ambidextrous slide stop, slide release. Now it is called a slide stop, but I can guarantee you this is meant to be used as a slide release as well. I have that directly from Glock. There is a reason that Glock sells extended slide releases like the one on this Gen 4. It's because it was meant to be used as a slide release too. Don't know where that rumor started, but I've heard it multiple times. I know it's still out there. So besides the sights on this gun, this thing is fully factory stock except for a polish job on the internals. So I can tell you the trigger on the Gen 5 to me feels a lot better than the Gen 4. We're gonna get into this thing and show you why. One real quick thing as well, they have done a really nice job chamfering down the nose on the Glock 45 there, you can see. Now what this helps you with is reholstering and unholstering as well. Now the Glock 34s, I think the Glock 30 and then some other models had that as well in the previous generations, but really nice to see that they gave us a little bit more to work with here. So let's go ahead and get this thing broken down and we will go into some of the stuff on the inside. I'm gonna break down the Gen 4 because there's some very specific changes that you have to kind of compare to see. Now on the frame, let's start there. We have gone back to the 2-pin design. You got your trigger block pin back here and you just have your trigger pin right there. So the housing pin and that pin are your only ones as compared to the Gen 4 and the Gen 3 version where you've got the locking block pin up top. Now my understanding was that Glock came up with that due to issues they had with the 40 cal round when they initially started making them with that. So as far as the rest of the frame, the internals is where a lot of the magic actually happens on this. The trigger block and everything back here has been completely changed. We'll pull this all the way apart. And then as well as how everything is retained up in here is not the same as it was on previous generations. So before we get into that, I just want to show you some of the differences on the slide as well. And one of the biggest things is the addition of material up in the front on the Gen 5. Now, if you can see that right there, the front end has been beefed up quite a bit. If you hold these side to side, you can see there's quite a difference in the size of the material on the Glock 5. And the reason for that is Glock was having these slides come back in, and this right here for the recoil spring and guide rod was being bent. That could have been from hard use, could have been from misuse, or it could have been from dropping this thing while being maintained or something. So the next biggest thing in here, and this is a lot of what helps the trigger as well, is the striker safety in here. That plunger on the previous versions was just that round barrel, and it does have some machine marks on the side. It's not completely smooth or rounded, and that's why a lot of people did round those out And if you get aftermarket parts kits, sometimes they round that off to get rid of those hard edges on there, because that is what the trigger bar right there grabs onto, and that causes some of that gritty feeling in the trigger. So on the Gen 5s, we have a completely different design. It's more of just kind of a chamfered shelf design here, and it does make quite a difference on the feel of the trigger. Instead of that hard-edged round top that's flat, this is just nice flat ledge where that trigger bar extension can go right up over there, depress that, and allow that striker to go forward. Using the same style dual captured guide rod and spring assembly there. But barrel is the Marksman barrel. There are some differences in this barrel. It does have a different crown, an 11-degree crown up in there. Get you a good look at that. And what that does is it allows for better gas dispersion. It also protects the rifling in there, which is Glock's enhanced polygonal rifling. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But it's also DLC coated as well as the slide. So as you can see, as I hold these next to each other, the Gen 5 definitely has a much deeper, richer, dark color as compared to the Gen 4 and previous versions, which almost appears a little bit gray when you hold them next to each other. The Gen 5 also does appear slightly shinier to my eye, and I've noticed a lot of other people have said that as well. So as far as the back of this, the backing plates are different as well, and I'll show you why here in a second. You can see you have different notches in the back, and the reason that is because in the trigger block back here, Glock has added this piece, and what that is supposed to do is help and alleviate the striker slapping around inside here and possibly wearing on that striker and getting striker ride by. Glock said that is not a huge issue, but on super high round guns it has happened before, so that has partly to do with how they changed that. Dimensionally inside the slide there are minute changes. As you can see, the wheat hole right there on the Gen 5 is definitely a little bit smaller than the Gen 4, but everything else is pretty much really similar looking in there. So go ahead and get this part back together. I want to get into the frame here and show you guys what makes a really big difference as far as the trigger goes here. Get this stuff out of the way. We'll grab my armorer's mat here. If you guys don't have yourself a little armorer's mat like this Lyman one that I have, it really can be a lifesaver when you're doing any kind of build or maintenance on a gun, because you've got areas to put everything in the pins so you don't misplace something. So the takedown procedure is the same, obviously minus that one pin, but you no longer have to worry about what side you take the pins out of. The reason for that is the slide stop is not going to be jumped over by those notches in the trigger pin anymore because of how they've modified it in here to go in. So you go ahead in here from whichever side you wish, put a little bit of down pressure on the trigger bar and the slide stop, and that pin usually pops right out. Just follow it all the way through, drop the pin to the side. Now pretty much the rest of this stuff is being held in here by the trigger pin and just the locking block. Let's go ahead and pull the locking block out, just get under it, pull straight up until you can get it to a point where you can get it all the way out. Throw the locking block to the side. The next piece that comes out is your ambidextrous slide stop. Now obviously quite a bit different if you're familiar with Gen 3, Gen 4 stuff. It is a captured spring in here, and that's what gives you your spring action. And then the trigger pin goes right through there, and it's all one piece now. You don't have that weird just one piece of metal coiled spring like you do in the Gen 4s right here. It's just that one section of spring right up in there, and that's what gives you the spring action. So once that is out, you can go ahead, get your trigger block housing pin out of the way, and you can pull straight up, pull your trigger mechanism all the way out. So again, the trigger bars are generation specific. You can see they've added some more stamp marks in here. Generally, from working with metal, I know that anytime you're adding marks and like this in here, it's for rigidity purposes. I don't know if that's what Glock manufactured it that way for, but if you've ever worked with metal, typically that's done to add more rigidity. Now, a big change in these is the actual trigger and how it works in here. It is no longer that coil spring. It's a completely different design. So you take the trigger bar out as normal, but as you can see, there is no spring that attaches it in there. Place that to the side, and you can see down in there, it's actually a captured mechanism down in there now, what is a completely different design, except for the Glock 43s have that same trigger spring in there that is new. So this is your mechanism that captures your trigger spring now. It's in the bottom hole. What we're gonna do is we're gonna push this forward like that, and once it comes out the back, we're gonna push up, and that'll come all the way out. So I found the best angle is to get right here like that. You press forward on it and push up, and it falls out like that. So this is a big change for Glock. They've gone away from that that round spring that was in there with the two ends that captured onto the back of the cruciform and then onto the actual trigger block as well. And this more looks kind of like a shock or a strut from a car if you've ever worked on vehicles before. According to Glock, you should never take this apart unless you realize that it is broken. It is very easy to take apart. All you're gonna do is turn like that, it'll come apart. When you put it back together, always make sure that that little flat edge right there is facing down and this hook is facing towards the other end and is up. If you don't do that right, you're obviously not gonna get it to work. So go ahead and put that to the side. Now, like I said, Glock did add this portion of plastic right there, and that is supposed to help save that striker so you don't get that striker ride by. And then the connector is the same as it's always been. It's right there in the block. You don't have to do anything with it besides clean it off once in a while when we're doing a deep clean on the gun. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this thing back together. I'll show you those steps. Actually, wait, let's show you how to take out the slide lock right there as well. So the slide lock is in there a completely different way too. If you can see, it's got a spring right there that's captured in the frame. It's not like on the Gen 4 and previous versions where it's that little leaf spring right there. So go ahead, and what you need to do is just get your thumb on there. You can go either way, it doesn't matter. Press down and then start pushing it over to the side. For some odd reason, it seems to come out easier on the left side on my gun than it does so the right. So once you get it part of the way over, just keep your thumb on top of it as you work it over. That way the spring doesn't come flying out, because it will. So keep your finger over it like that, turn it upside down, and your spring comes out. So again, you can see completely different design, just a small spring in there. And when you take the slide lock out, always remember that that little lip right there, that edge always faces up and towards the shooter. So go ahead, put this back together so you guys know all the steps. Go ahead, put your slide lock spring right back in there. So as you can see, that is back in there. Now what you do is you grab this, make sure that ledge is facing up and back. Get it part of the way in there, just like that. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna get your punch and you're gonna wanna press down on that spring, just like that, and start riding the slide lock up over it. And once you get to a certain point, just like that, you can press it all the way through. And then just make sure that the spring goes up into the valley in that slide lock lever, and then test it for function. So at this point, we'll go ahead and get our trigger block back together. So what you're gonna do is grab your trigger spring now, make sure that the flat edge right there is facing down and that your hook is facing up, and you're gonna go directly into the trigger block like that. You're gonna press it through the top hole and then grab it on the outside, push it down. Pretty much only goes in one way, guys. You're not gonna have any problem with this at all. So it'll go through. Just like this. My bigger hands sometimes make it difficult to work. So you push it through, pull it down, and it seats in. Just make sure that it's aligned in there like that. Grab your trigger bar, and you have to ensure that as you get in here, you need to have that cruciform capture that ledge, and then it'll seat in just as it would on previous generations. Go ahead, reacquire your slide. What you're gonna do is go ahead, put your whole trigger assembly back in. Make sure it's nice and clicked into place. Grab your ambidextrous slide stop, slide that in. Grab your locking block, put it right over the top. And what I found is easiest, if you guys just put a little bit of down pressure on both top of the trigger bar and the slide lock, slide stop lever right there. The pin usually goes through with ease like that. Just make sure that it's centered up and it's captured. Check for function right there on your slide stop. Go ahead, put your trigger block pin back in. Make sure that's evened up. Go ahead, put the gun back together. Cycle the slide, pull the trigger, make sure the trigger returns, make sure it resets good, and then make sure your slide lock and everything works, and you have the gun back together. I apologize guys, I almost forgot. I wanted to do a couple of pull tests on this so you could see where this is gonna pull at with just that factory polish job on there. Let's go ahead and prepare the gun just using my manual 10-minute gauge right here. And we'll do 3 pulls just to stay consistent with what I usually do when I'm testing other triggers and connectors. And I pull from the same spot on that trigger. So right there, we can see that that thing pulled just under 4 pounds, probably about 3 pounds and 12 ounces. We'll give it a couple more goes here. But that's pretty much where I expected it to be. I've had good luck doing that 25-cent trigger job on the Glock factory dot connectors, or even the Glock minus connector, usually pulled a little bit lower. So you can see right there again, extremely consistent at about 3 pounds, 12 ounces. We'll go one more time here. And same thing, almost exactly the same. So extremely consistent there, guys. We'll go ahead, we'll get back up into the chair. I really hope that helped you out, understand some of the differences in the Generation 5 and specifically the Model 45. Black and red, baby, black and red. So I did test a ton of different mags on this Glock 45 to include obviously the ETS one. That just happens to be a red one. But it just ate up every mag and every round that I put into this gun. So from the Magpul mags, the ETS mags, obviously the factory mags, Gen 3, 4, and the Gen 5 mags, because they are a little bit different. So a lot of people out there maybe say these are vast improvements, and some maybe say they aren't. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what your opinion is based off of what you learned or already knew here today. Is it that much of an improvement for you? The trigger. Now, as you guys saw up front on those pull tests, not a huge drop in trigger. I did polish this one out, but the trigger does have a better feel to it by far than the Gen 3 and Gen 4s. And those front serrations, like I said, I love front serrations. They can typically only help you. And that little bit of a flared mag well. Now, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but you do have just a little bit of that flare in there. And it does make a little difference. It gives my fingers a little bit of something to kind of index really good on that gun while I'm staying nice and high on the access there. And I really think it's great that they put that on there. Now for magwell companies, that's gonna cause a problem because my understanding is it's very difficult to design a magwell based around that flare. Like, share, subscribe if you like what's going on here with the channel, guys. Provides me the opportunity to work with more vendors and manufacturers to bring you guys unbiased reviews on things you may be interested in. And I appreciate you guys spending some more of your time with me here. I know it's valuable to you, and this was a little bit of a longer review, but I really wanted to give you guys as much information as I could so you can make an informed decision on if the Glock 45 would be something that you're interested in. And there's a lot of good things coming for the channel. I went to SHOT Show and I was able to make a ton of contacts out there and have some really cool stuff coming in from companies like Hold Up Displays. We're gonna do a gun wall, and I'm gonna change this whole office around. A little bit something cool to look at. And I've got some really cool other companies that are sending some triggers and some different parts out for this gun to test. So get out there, have some fun. I appreciate the time you spent here with me today. Stay safe, stay ready, guys, and range time, do it.